Nancy Kulp's final interview confirms what we all suspected. Nancy Kulp was born Nancy Jane Kulp on August 28, 1921 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Nancy Kulp grew up in a disciplined, academically minded household. Her father, Robert Tilden Kulp, was a federal revenue agent, and her mother, Marjorie Kulp, encouraged intellectual curiosity and cultural awareness. From an early age, Nancy showed a sharp mind and a natural leaning toward learning. She excelled academically and went on to attend Florida State College for Women, now Florida State University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in journalism. This early training sharpened her communication skills and contributed to the articulate, precise manner that later became a trademark of her screen persona. Kulp's life took a dramatic turn during World War II when she left journalism behind to serve her country. She joined the U.S. Navy Reserve, becoming one of the early women to serve as an officer in the waves, women accepted for volunteer emergency service, rising to the rank of lieutenant junior grade. She worked in aviation training and served with distinction. Her military service gave her a strong sense of discipline, professionalism, and toughness, traits that would guide her throughout her life and career. After the war, Nancy Kulp moved to Hollywood to pursue acting, studying under renowned teacher Max Reinhardt. Unlike many aspiring actresses of that time, she did not rely solely on glamour or typecasting. Instead, she built her career on intelligence, timing, and a keen understanding of character. Throughout the 1950s, she appeared in numerous films and television programs, often playing sharp-witted secretaries, intellectuals, or eccentric women. Her film credits included appearances in The Parent Trap, 1961, The Three Faces of Eve, 1957, and Shane, 1953, where she showed her versatility and subtle screen presence. Nancy Kulp's career reached its greatest public recognition in 1962 when she was cast as Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies. As the dryly humorous, socially refined secretary to millionaire oil tycoon Milburn Drysdale, Kulp provided a perfect comedic counterbalance to the show's rural humor. Her portrayal of Miss Hathaway, intelligent, loyal, romantically hopeful, and unfailingly polite, made her one of the most beloved characters on the series. Though the role was comedic, Kulp filled it with dignity and warmth, ensuring that Miss Hathaway was never merely a cartoon. She received multiple Emmy nominations for her performance, a testament to her skill and popularity. Despite the success of the Beverly Hillbillies, the role became a double-edged sword. Like many actors strongly associated with iconic television characters, Kulp found herself typecast after the series ended in 1971. Nevertheless, she continued to work steadily, appearing in television shows such as The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island. She also reprised her role as Miss Hathaway in reunion specials and related projects, always embracing the affection fans held for the character. Beyond her acting career, Nancy Kulp was deeply committed to civic engagement and public service. In a bold and unconventional move for a Hollywood actress of her era, she entered politics in the 1980s. A passionate advocate for progressive causes, she ran for the U.S. House of Representatives from Pennsylvania in 1984 as a Democrat. Though she lost the election, her campaign was notable for its reliance on celebrity status. Kulp viewed political participation as a moral responsibility, reflecting her lifelong commitment to public service that had begun during her military years. Nancy Kulp's brief marriage to Charles Malcolm Dacus occupies only a small space in the public record of her life. Yet, it offers an intriguing glimpse into her early adulthood, long before she became widely known as one of television's most distinctive character actresses. At the time of her marriage, Kulp was still shaping her identity, balancing personal expectations with intellectual ambition, and navigating a world that often imposed rigid norms on women's lives and choices. Kulp married Charles Malcolm Dacus on April 1, 1951 in a ceremony held at Miami Beach Community Church. The setting itself suggests a conventional and respectable occasion consistent with the post-war American ideal of marriage as a central milestone in a young woman's life. At the time, Kulp was 29 years old while Dacus was 23, a notable age difference that subtly reversed the more typical pattern of that era in which husbands were often older than their wives. This detail hints at Kulp's independent spirit and her willingness to step outside conventional expectations, even in matters as traditional as marriage. Dacus worked as an account executive with WTVJ, a television station in Miami, placing him in the emerging world of broadcast media at a time when television itself was still in its early years. Although Kulp had not yet achieved fame, the connection to broadcasting foreshadowed in an almost ironic way her own future career in television. At this stage, however, Her life was far removed from the sound stages and studio lights that would later define her public persona. She was a highly educated woman with strong intellectual interests, and her path toward acting success was still uncertain and largely unexplored. According to the engagement announcement, Kulp and Dacus had been dating for 5 years prior to their marriage. This long courtship suggests a serious and sustained relationship that began when Kulp was in her mid-20s, a formative period during which many women of her generation were expected to prioritize marriage and domestic stability. 5 years of dating implies careful thought rather than rushing, indicating that both partners likely entered the marriage with a sense of commitment and expectation. For Kulp, this relationship may have represented an attempt to reconcile personal affection with societal pressure to settle into married life. Despite the length of their courtship and the formal nature of their wedding, the marriage itself was short-lived. Kulp and Dacus divorced in 1953, barely 2 years after they were married. The brevity of the union suggests that fundamental differences or incompatibilities emerged once they began married life. While the public record does not provide specific details about the reasons for the divorce, the outcome reflects the challenges Kulp faced in aligning her personal life with her inner sense of purpose and independence. The divorce marked a significant turning point in Kulp's life. In the early 1950s, divorce still carried social stigma, particularly for women, and choosing to leave a marriage required both resolve and self-awareness. For Kulp, ending the marriage may have been an early assertion of her determination to live authentically, even when doing so meant defying conventional expectations. The experience likely reinforced her understanding that fulfillment could not be achieved by simply following prescribed social roles. For decades, fans of the Beverly Hillbillies sensed that something beneath the cheerful facade of television's Clampett family was never quite right. While the show projected warmth, humor, and a kind of folksy harmony, rumors persisted that not all of its stars shared the same affection off-camera. In what would become one of her last candid interviews, Nancy Kulp finally gave voice to those long-whispered suspicions, confirming that her feelings toward Buddy Ebsen were far from fond. Her words, delivered late in life with striking clarity, offered a rare and unfiltered look at the emotional cost of working within a highly controlled television system. Kulp did not speak with bitterness for its own sake, nor did she appear eager to bring up old Hollywood gossip. Instead, her tone suggested a woman who had reached a point where politeness and silence no longer served her. Reflecting on her years on the Beverly Hillbillies, she admitted, "I know people want to remember it as one big happy family, but that simply wasn't true for me." This simple statement cut through decades of nostalgia, revealing a lived experience that contrasted sharply with the show's public image. At the center of her resentment was Buddy Ebsen, the show's patriarch and undisputed star. Kulp made it clear that her feelings were not based on a single argument or misunderstanding, but on a pattern of behavior she found deeply troubling. "But he was not the kindly, benevolent figure people imagine," she said. "He liked control, and he liked being reminded that he was the most important person on that set." For Kulp, who was highly educated, politically outspoken, and fiercely independent, this dynamic proved especially suffocating. She went on to describe how Ebsen's authority extended beyond his role as an actor. "He wasn't just Jed Clampett," Kulp remarked. "He acted like the moral compass, the judge and the boss." In an era when television hierarchies were rigid and dissent was discouraged, Kulp felt her intelligence and individuality were treated not as assets but as irritants. The tension between them, she implied, was ideological as much as personal. Kulp was particularly candid about how this strained relationship affected her sense of belonging. "I never felt respected by him," she said bluntly. "Tolerated perhaps, but never respected." This lack of respect in her view fostered an environment where subtle slights and quiet exclusions became routine. Over time, what might have been minor frustrations hardened into genuine dislike. "People use the word dislike," she added, "but hate is closer to the truth. I hated how small he made me feel." What makes Kulp's final reflection so powerful is the absence of dramatics. She did not exaggerate or make her experiences bigger than they were. Instead, she spoke with the weary certainty of someone who had long carried an unspoken truth. "I stayed professional," she emphasized. "I did my job, but I paid for it emotionally." That emotional toll, she suggested, lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling, shaping how she viewed both her career and the industry that celebrated her, while silencing her. In acknowledging her resentment, Kulp also reclaimed ownership of her story. "I'm tired of pretending it was all wonderful," she said. "It wasn't." These words resonated as a quiet act of defiance against the myth-making machinery of classic television. Rather than allowing her legacy to be flattened into nostalgia, Kulp chose honesty, even if it complicated the public's affection for a beloved show. Ultimately, Nancy Kulp's final interview did not seek to vilify Buddy Ebsen as a person, but to articulate the truth of her own experience. Her admission of hatred was not petty or vindictive. It was reflective, personal, and deeply human. "I don't expect anyone to take sides," she concluded. "I just want the truth to exist." In speaking that truth, she confirmed what many had long suspected, that behind the laughter and the reruns, there were real people, real power struggles, and real wounds that never fully healed. Nancy Kulp's final years were marked by a quiet dignity that contrasted sharply with the lively, eccentric characters for which she was best known. For much of her adult life, Kulp had been a cigarette smoker, a habit that was common and socially accepted during the height of her career in radio, film, and television. Like many performers of her generation, smoking was woven into the rhythms of studio life. Long hours on sets, late-night rehearsals, and the stress of maintaining a public career all made cigarettes a familiar presence. At the time, the long-term health consequences of smoking were not always fully understood or openly discussed. And for Kulp, as for countless others, the habit quietly followed her into later life. In 1990, Kulp received a devastating diagnosis: cancer. By then, she was largely removed from the public spotlight, having stepped away from acting years earlier and having devoted herself to civic life, education, and her personal interests. The diagnosis marked the beginning of a physically and emotionally demanding period as she underwent chemotherapy in an effort to slow or stop the progression of the disease. Chemotherapy treatments during that era were often harsh with limited options compared to modern standards, and they frequently took a heavy toll on patients' strength and quality of life. Friends and acquaintances later recalled that Kulp faced her treatments with the same intelligence and resolve that had characterized her professional life. Serious, thoughtful, and realistic, yet determined to endure with grace. Despite these efforts, by 1991, it became clear that the cancer had spread. At that point, the focus shifted from recovery to comfort, reflection, and coming to terms with the inevitable. Kulp was 69 years old, an age at which many reflect deeply on the meaning and impact of their lives. Though she had often been typecast in comedic or eccentric roles, most famously as Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies, those close to her understood that she was far more complex than the characters she portrayed. In her final months, she was surrounded not by Hollywood fanfare, but by a quieter, more personal world, one shaped by memory, intellect, and the relationships she valued most. Nancy Kulp died on February 3, 1991 in Palm Desert, California. Palm Desert, a serene desert community, had become a place of rest and retreat for many in their later years, offering calm surroundings far removed from the pressures of Los Angeles and the entertainment industry. Her passing marked the end of a life that had bridged multiple worlds. Classical education and show business, comedy and seriousness, public recognition and private conviction. News of her death prompted renewed appreciation for her work, particularly her ability to bring warmth, wit, and humanity to roles that could easily have been played as mere cartoons.